Welcome to Emotionally Baked, where emotions and baking are the two most perfect ingredients. Hello and welcome back to the Emotionally Baked podcast, where we bake something yummy, all while talking about our emotions and working it out together. Welcome back to our next episode. It is Sacrifice and cinnamon rolls, and I know that it's not like my typical the letters starting the same, but it sounds the same. So hopefully you'll give me grace with that. Cinnamon rolls are one of the things I love to make, and it's a comfort food. And I need comfort food right now because I'm feeling a little overwhelmed, and it has to do with sacrificing. And so I'm going to go ahead and I've warmed up my milk, and I will see where I got this recipe from in a second. Can't remember right off the top of my head, but I'm going to mix in a tablespoon of sugar into my milk. Now, if you didn't know, doing this helps to activate your yeast, and we want to activate your yeast. So I'm going to do 1 teaspoon, 2 teaspoons and a half. And we're going to mix that up. And we're going to let that activate. It's really important to let that activate. And if you also didn't know, like me, you want to refrigerate your yeast so it doesn't, quote, die. I never noticed it on the cover of mine. It said refrigerate after opening. It took me a couple of years to figure out, and I'm not going to lie, it's kind of embarrassing, but it did. It took me a couple of years to realize that, I needed to refrigerate my yeast. So, anywho, yes. So this is going to sit for a minute. It's going to activate. It's going to get bubbly. We hope. Cross our fingers. And hi, welcome. I'm feeling it today. And as you can see, the lighting is a little darker because I am baking at night. I usually don't bake at night. I usually bake during the day when either my kids are gone or, I have the house to myself, or just during different times. But I felt the need to bake. I was feeling a lot. And I said, I need to make cinnamon rolls. And the perfect thing that I was feeling was just sacrifice. And I don't know, this doesn't have to pertain, like, you can be a sacrificial person, give of yourself all the time, and not be a parent. So let me just preface that, because my stories will be about parenting, sacrificing, because that's why I'm feeling it a little bit. Because I believe anybody can have a sacrificial heart. Like, you just give of yourself. You just give and you give and you give. And sometimes that is really hard to just keep giving and giving and giving. This is going to be a hard one for me because I am in it. So if this topic is triggering, if parenting is, or if sacrificial giving or just being that way in life is triggering, I don't mind if you don't listen to this one, because it actually is for me a little bit. I am really struggling right now with sacrificing. Okay, so the yeast has definitely activated. So what I did is I went ahead and put my flour, my salt in a bowl in my stand mixer, because my stand mixer is going to do all the work today. It's going to love on all these ingredients. So the rest of the ingredients are sour. So I've tried many different cinnamon roll recipes, and this is a different one for me. So this is new, so I'm excited to try it. What we're going to do is we're going to add the yeast and milk mixture, the softened butter, sour cream, which I've never done before, eggs, and the rest of the sugar and vanilla into this bowl. That should be fun. I cannot wait to try it. So, and I might be eating a cinnamon roll at midnight tonight, and that's okay. All right, so this, like I said, anybody can be sacrificing. This is not, I'm not trying to single anybody out, but what I'm feeling right now is some parental sacrifice. And I don't know if anybody feels this at times, but I'm feeling it right now. So I gotta set this on my lap. It is too tall. You know, it's hard to say when you first have kids, and it's hard to, even describe, to tell somebody, like when they have kids, about what's going to happen as a new parent. But there's this thing where you just sacrifice of yourself for your children. And I've had it so many times with my kids over the years, and today was no exception. And I'll fill you in on what happened, but I just want to give other examples first. Like, when you're a kid, when you know it's going to be cold in a building, and you tell your kid to bring a sweater. You bring a sweater because you know it's going to be cold, and your kid doesn't bring a sweater, but then your kid complains that they're cold. And what do we do as parents? We give sacrifice of ourselves, and we give to our kid. We give our kid the sweater. Or many things like that. Like, I've had situations happen where your kid wants to, they want this flavor of ice cream. And you say to yourself, they're not going to like that. They're not going to like that ice cream. But, thank you, chickens. But they're going to ask for it anyways. And you as a parent, instead of getting something that you want, you get the vanilla or the whatever. And you inevitably, when your child decides that they do not like said that they chose, will you trade with me? And then you trade. You sacrifice, you give of yourself, and you give it to them. Now, sometimes I know that, maybe we should just say to our child, well, that was your choice, or, But, there are times I feel like, as parents, like we choose to give up of ourselves, and we choose to sacrifice for our children. Just, and there's times when I do give in and I say, or I don't give in and I say, well, that's what you chose, or that's all there is. Or, if I didn't bring the sweater at the time, I go, sorry, I can't help you because I don't have a sweater. You can snuggle with me. That's how I can help. So those are just some mild examples. I'm going to go ahead and put this attachment on my stand mixer, and I'm going to beat this, or blend it, knead it, until it's ready. Now, I don't want to throw any of my children under the bus, but today I had a sacrificial moment and with one of my children, and they had asked to borrow something, and many, I even think it was years ago, asked to borrow something years ago. And I totally forgot about it. And they had asked me today if they could use said borrowed thing in a project that they were doing. And I was like, oh, cool, yeah. I totally forgot what they were talking about. The object, I totally forgot what it was. And I should have, as being a parent, I should have asked, remind me what that was again, remind me, show me. And I didn't until the project was finished, and said project was shown to me, and it was a moment. it was a moment where I had to say as a mom, am I going to get upset? Because my child did everything right. They asked, and they got my assurance, and they did a very good job, and it looks great. And it was something that, the item was something that, it wasn't sentimental to me, but it was just something that I didn't think was going to be used for that, and it was something that I had purchased a long time ago that at that time I was really excited about, and I guess it just kind of like shocked me in the moment, to say the least. I was just, oh. And I think as parents, we have to take moments like that, and we have to say, you know what? It wasn't a big deal. And in my brain at first, it was a big deal. It was like, wait a second, that I didn't know that's what you were talking about. And my mind wanted my mind was short-circuiting at the moment of said project was shown to me. And it was like, wait a second, that's what you were talking about? And I wanted to get upset. Like it was very triggering. Like I wanted to get upset. I wanted to but then I was like, okay, wait. They asked me. I said yes. I didn't confirm. And actually looks really good. And it wasn't something that, it wasn't something like my wedding dress or a keepsake box it wasn't something like that. It wasn't something that had sentimental, super sentimental value. So I was okay. But I had to take a moment and say, Heather, there's moments as parents that we sacrifice the things that we like, the things that we, are ours, in quotes, to give to our kids and to let our kids express themselves, let our kids come into their own. And now this thing that I thought is going to be my kids' thing, and I'm really happy for them because they are really happy with what they did, and I'm slowly coming to the other side of the sacrifice. But there's oftentimes when we as parents sacrifice for our kids that I feel like there's that moment of I've given so much, how much more can I give, and that's really sometimes hard. It's hard as a adult to continue to adult when all you wanted, I wanted to cry. I wanted to say, how dare you? Not really. I just wanted to kind of be like, what? I wanted to react not in an adult way. I wanted to react in probably a childish way, I would say. And I feel like there's always those moments. There is, when we're sacrificing, we say, when my kid was cold and I had to give them, my shirt or my sweater to be okay. There's that moment where you think in your brain, ugh, I told them, I told them. And then we have to, and then we say, and then it goes away, and then we say, okay, here's my sweater, or okay, here's the vanilla, you're just it's not, I don't think it's a bad thing to feel those instantaneous moments of, I told you so, just like that, oh, yes, I knew this was going to happen. But it's that then recovery of that moment to then move on to the sacrificing moment, where I think the growth lies, where we're not in that state of, I told you so. We've moved on to the state of, okay, I knew it, but I'm going to sacrifice for my child anyways, and I'm going to give to my child and I'm going to do everything I can. I think it still works like when you're like, you tell your child like you got to work on this homework, it's going to be done, or it's going to be due, and they don't get it done, and then at the last minute they're struggling. And we sacrifice our time, we sacrifice our mental health to help our child. I think that's just what we do as parents. We sacrifice. And yeah, it's just, yeah. Okay. So I'm going to let these cinnamon rolls whip up and knead for another 5 to 7 minutes. And then it's going to sit. It's going to sit and rise for a good hour. So we're going to do that. And I'm going to check on this filling and see how this filling is going to work. And we'll come back. So don't go away. I'm going to do a little voiceover now of my baking because life happens, as you know, and there were kids and everything happening. It's a Saturday night. There's a lot going on. So here I am. I'm going to go ahead and take the dough out of the mixer after it has risen the bowl, and I'm just going to go ahead and knead it here on my countertop surface and just get it to where it doesn't stick, and it's not going to be too hard to work with. So I'm flouring it up, kneading it, and then I'm going to roll it out into the best rectangle that I can do. So I got my grandmother's rolling pin, great rolling pin, and I'm going to go ahead and roll this out to about, I believe I measured it. I took a measuring tape and actually measured to make sure that I had it the right size. But I really think it's kind of whatever. I did about 16 inches, a rectangle, maybe like 16 by 12, something like that. Or maybe it was 16 by 20. I'm not quite sure if I'm thinking back to how much I rolled this out. But just rolling it out into a relatively decent sized rectangle to get, I did 8 large cinnamon rolls. You could definitely do a longer and skinnier roll just to make smaller, make more of a batch. So you can make 12. If you have smaller ones, I do think the recipe on the website I used does say the exact length and, like the dimensions for how much you want to roll. Here I'm using the measuring tape to measure my rolled out dough. If you're just listening to this, just know I literally took a measuring tape out of my kitchen drawer and measured what I was doing. So funny. But anyways, so next after this, the recipe did call for making this mixture for the inside of the cinnamon rolls. And while I could do that, and I could have done that here, I often like to just take my butter just straight out of a tub and spread that first onto my cinnamon rolls and then put like the cinnamon sugar mixture on top of it. So that's what I'm doing. I'm going to go ahead and just spread the butter on top. I could have mixed it all together and it would just been a bowl of butter, cinnamon, sugar, but I like doing it this way, whatever works for you. So I'm going to go ahead now and top my butter with the cinnamon and sugar mixture, and that's just how I like to do it. I don't know, it's just kind of how I like to do it. Next, I'm going to go ahead and roll these cinnamon rolls up. They, it still was a little tacky, sticky, the dough, so it got kind of messy, but it was a very floofy dough. I think it might have had something to do with the, having a sour cream in the dough for the first time. I've never, felt it so fluffy as a cinnamon roll dough before, so that was pretty neat. So I'm going to go ahead and slice the dough into 8 rounds to fill up this pan. And I really think, I was again, Saturday night, it was a lot going on, so I wasn't doing this as neatly as possible. It doesn't look the best, but hey, it just matters that they're going to taste wonderful. And they did taste wonderful, so that's all that matters really. But yeah, I'm just kind of a messily, sloppily cutting them here and putting them into the pan. They're going to rise here again for a few more minutes until I stick them in the oven. But once they're done, and once I have them all in here, in the oven they'll go. And it did say to put them at 350 and then it will last like 5 minutes to 375 just to make them a little brown. So they look really yummy and really good. So I hope, this recipe's turning out really well. All right, friends, thanks for dealing with the voiceover part of this podcast that we just did. Life happens and you got kids around and you got things happening, so you just got to do it how you're going to do it. So I have the cinnamon rolls here. They have risen for the second time, and the thing that I've never done before is take warm cream and pour it all over and bake it in cream. I've never done that before, so I'm excited to see how this will turn out. It said to pour the heavy cream over top of all of the cinnamon rolls before you stick it in the oven, which I have never, ever done. So that should be interesting. So we're going to stick this in the oven, and then it does say to make it a higher temp to kind of finish them off a little bit. I already whipped up the icing. The icing was super simple, just some cream cheese, butter, sugar, vanilla, that kind of thing. And I might have a midnight snack here. But get those in, see how they turn out. And thank you for joining me on this exploration of sacrificing that we do for our families and for our kids. And again, if you're not a parent, there's other ways that we sacrifice as well. And I'm just hoping that each and every one of us just figure out the joy in the sacrifice, how we are giving back into our families, to our either ourselves or to others, how we can find the joy in the sacrifice. So sacrificing can be hard. It can be a little stressful. It can be a little bit of a battle, but we've got this. All right, so we're going to see how these turn out in a few minutes. So join me for that end capture of the finished product. So whether the salt in your recipes comes from tears or a teaspoon, just remember we baked it out. See you next time.